I mean, as somebody that calls themselves a developer, like I don't spend 100% of my time developing. It's maybe 50%. That makes it really challenging when I'm trying to kind of estimate how long things are going to take because, I'm not just doing 100%. So everything always takes longer than it would if I wasn't doing all the other stuff. But using these new tools, I can speed up a lot of those non-development things to give me more time to do the things that really kind of move the needle.
Yeah, I also, I like your perspective there. I also am finding that to get more accurate solutions from AI, since it's really considering everything, we end up narrowing it down to something that would have been perfectly fine with a logic-based solution or not something so wide. So you start out with this, AI is the catch, it'll solve all the problems, but then you end up to getting accuracy, narrowing it to something that you could have done with a much cheaper solution.
Yeah, I think there's elements of that. Again, it's trying to understand kind of where the real cost savings are, but also where the actual ultimate costs are. I mean, there was an example. I was talking to somebody last week and they said, it was amazing. I wrote these prompts and it kind of generated this piece of code for me, and only took, like half an hour to do that. And it might have taken me 2 hours to write the code. And I was like, but how long did it take you to like form those prompts and to kind of re-ask that same question and add more context to it to get to that point? And they were like, probably a couple of hours. And I was like, so you saved how much time?
Right.
Again, it's like we just need to be careful in terms of, I think, as we get better and kind of understanding kind of how to kind of interact with these, kind of like chat models, I think there's a lot we can do and we'll get better at it. And, there's a lot of like, specialized, chats for certain things, and there's based specifically on like, certain types of questions or models. And obviously we can do things with our own private data as well, so we don't have some of those same like concerns that are out there. But, what we're doing for a lot of this initial work, until we personally get better at interacting, is that we're just transferring the work effort, from a place that is very familiar to something that for us to be totally comfortable and to be able to make kind of like more meaningful estimates of how long things will take and how much time savings we can actually have for these elements.
Yeah, that's great. What are the most significant gaps between your digital ambitions and the realities of today?
Well, that's a tough one. I mean, the problem is, there's a piece of software that can to do pretty much anything. It's trying to find some of that, like as we have more and more apps out there, not just in an app store, but generally, like maybe you find it on a website or a tool or whatever, like discoverability is getting harder every day. Like, I had somebody tell me a couple of days ago, there's this new tool that does X. And it was amazing. It's like, and it's been around for like 6 months. It's like, how do I not know about that already? Like, why are these people keeping secrets, right? It's like, but there's so many things out there that can do so many things, and it's trying to understand, like, which one of these new, like, very similar apps, like, is the one to kind of like try, or is it the one that's really been like, has it been curated by somebody that you trust? And they're like, one of the things we do very regularly these days is to have some kind of, AI that, invited to our meeting so it can take notes and it's action items stuff. Like, the one we were using at first, it's like, it does magical job at first. But then it's like, you see a few of the cracks and it's just like, and there are some challenges in how some of it works. And we're trying another one, but it's not like there are 2 or 3 of these things. There are probably like 200 or 300. And it's trying to like, filter the noise because everybody's on the latest bandwagon. And a lot of it's kind of clickbait stuff.
Yeah, when we do CTO advisory, we have this idea of this periodic table of business tools kind of thing. Like, what are your CRMs? What are your... And a lot of folks have already made certain decisions, like to be more Google aligned or more Microsoft aligned. And it's interesting to hear you kind of suggest that even continues down to the next level of tools beyond the business basics tools, but even like, hey, which note taker is the best? I think we need to kind of renew our commitment to helping people figure that out, because when we do the consulting, there's always this massive tools discussion, and a lot of folks are spending money and investing in like tool switching, and it's a huge sunk cost.
But yeah, I mean, one of the challenges we had last year, like we had somebody was trying to force on this kind of project management system kind of on us. And for the scale that we're at, it doesn't make sense. Like, there's a lot of noise, a lot of fluff that you put in to get no real value out. And it's trying to understand is kind of what they get you. You mentioned, like, the Microsofts or the Googles. Like, sometimes you have to buy into an ecosystem for certain other reasons. It may not be driven by technical decisions. It may be like some like business decision or some alignment, or maybe you have like certain customers that say, I'm not going to work on that particular kind of back end. But I think from the development perspective, like generally, like, we want to be agnostic, and I think if you're developing some kind of like cloud infrastructure kind of applications, like with certain exceptions, like there's no reason why it can't be pretty much agnostic across there. Like the same, we have like, certain anti-Apple shops, anti-Android shops, just like, why are you against it? Like, it's a mobile app. It's running on devices that power like so many people. If you want that reach, you need to build for both. These kind of exclusive platforms, again, like maybe Google's going to throw you a ton of money to own the Android. Good luck with that. But again, like depending on what your ultimate goal is. But again, a lot of it's driven by business decisions that you have no kind of say in. So that's always challenging from the kind of technical perspective, where somebody says, can you do X? Yes is the answer. And then it's all those caveats that you come kind of along with that to try to understand. It's like, well, okay, you can, the whole thing of like the three things. You can be quick, you can be inexpensive. I'm never using the word cheap, inexpensive,
yeah.
or whatever the other one is. And again, pick 2 from 3.
Yeah.
It's very hard to kind of do all those, but there's often decisions that are kind of forced upon you that you have to work with.
Yeah, cool. How do you align technology roadmaps with overall business strategy?
For my particular kind of like ecosystem right in the world, it's fairly straightforward because, we're creating, workplace safety training in virtual reality to enhance existing training. So we have very few options when it comes to like the underlying technologies that we're using. For the most part, we're using kind of engines that are used for also gaming and other entertainment experiences. So for the most part, for the generally available one, I know there are others who may complain like, oh, you didn't mention X. It's like, it's Unreal and Unity. Like, we use Unity, been a big fan of it for a long time, used it, very familiar. It's just very familiar. And that's the comfort level we have from that. Like the capabilities that it provides, it allows us to do things in very kind of quick, efficient ways. We've built up a lot of institutional knowledge using it. Like, could we get greater visual fidelity by switching to Unreal? Yes. Like, do the applications that we're creating require that? No. The cost involved in repurposing or retooling or retraining the team, it doesn't make sense. But the biggest thing with a lot of the content we're creating, like, the code is a tiny, tiny piece. It's all the visual content, the audio, the video, that stuff. And that's agnostic to whatever end ultimate platform we have. For us, it's trying to target certain VR headsets and understand where that is. And in that, we're going with what the broad market has adopted. It'd be great if we could do it on the $10,000 Pimax headsets that need to be connected to a super fast PC. Guess what? Our clients don't need that. They don't want that. They want a mobile device that's inexpensive. So a lot of time we're targeting, the Meta Quest 2, Quest 3, Quest Pro, those things. Like Apple Vision Pro just came out, very shiny box, very nice. I'd love to have one. But guess what? Our clients don't look at that right now as something that makes sense for them. Again, they're often quite price sensitive.
Right.
If you want to go buy 10 of those, let's call it $4,000 a pop versus 10 $500 Quest 3s, one's going to look slightly less crazy, and knowing that these kind of headsets have a limited shelf life, in terms of like, the evolution of technology. If you're going to tell someone you've got to drop 40 grand on 10 headsets now and in 3 years time do the same again, or actually it'll be more in 3 years time, inflation and stuff.
Right.
So why not? Yeah, like again, it's like we have to be careful, and like often the solution that we provide from a technology perspective kind of like isn't the best we can do right now because the business can't justify it. And that, as a technology creator, is really, really frustrating sometimes because I want the biggest, newest, shiniest thing to play with, to build and to do these things. But, it's great if you build it, but, the whole like you build it, they will come.
Yeah. You need to convey the safety scenario in VR, not, create some alternate universe, right? It needs to.
I mean, it needs users. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's great to build it, but building something in a vacuum, like, it's such a soulless experience. I want people to use this, and especially with what we do, like this is, enhancing safety training. It sounds really trite, but like, by somebody having improved training, it might make the difference of them going home at night.
Right.
You can't touch. It's like that just one person like making a difference like that, I think is a huge potential.
Yeah, that's awesome. What lessons have you learned from tech initiatives that failed to deliver expected value?
It depends on the definition of value. If you're talking financially, like that's often the easy one. I mean, it's really tough. Like every time you kind of make tech decisions, you're taking a risk. Like, are you doing it with all the information that you should have? Like often we go and build things where the business actually hasn't decided how they will use it, and what they use, or how it's defined isn't fully thought through, so we end up building something that doesn't quite achieve all the goals, and then you have a hard problem with the people in the business buying in and actually using it. Like if you have, like using a CRM as an example, like if you have a CRM that only half the people are using, it's pretty much worthless, because the whole point of it there is like a source of truth for everybody that captures all the information. Like it's not just a case of like giving somebody an app that a few people really like and use. You have to kind of get that buy-in at every level of the organization, and they have to like, basically live and breathe it as well. Like you get, it's more changing of attitudes and that discipline, and it's a behavioral change you have, like not because it's something shiny and new and I've got to learn some new. It's like that friction you have to like, try to take away as much as possible. But again, like often the challenge isn't on the tech side, it's the people side. People are the problem here.
Right. Yeah. The organizational behavior change, we've seen that with like ERP rollouts, and just because the tech is there, even if it's perfectly executed, does not mean it connects with the users. There's often additional functions that need to be taken seriously there, where training, and guiding them, into those new dimensions.
I mean, there's even some things like really, really complicated stuff that users find really, really challenging, like having a password, for example. Like that is one of the biggest risks to businesses right now. You walk past people's screens like now they're kind of back in the office, and there's post-it notes with their passwords. Like, why haven't we solved that problem? Like,
right.
It's been there forever, and now we're going like totally almost in the other direction. Like I had to log into something the other day, I gave them my password. Then it prompted me with an email for a code to put in, and then it wanted me to do some 2FA on an authenticated app as well. It's like, okay, now I don't want a password.
Right.
Like this is one of the single most challenging thing of people in business with technology.
Right.
It's not that I can't read your Excel spreadsheet, or this file isn't compatible with my app from another suite. And it's like people can't do the simplest things right now. Like that's where we have to save so much time. Like how many times have people like, oh, I can't log into my X, so I can't get it to you now. Like you shouldn't have to do that. And AI should give it to you already, by the way.
Right.
So AI does have to have a use. Yeah. But again, like we still have some really, really hard problems that, only get solved on the people side and not the tech side.
Right. That's cool. How do you cultivate a culture of innovation and digital fluency in your organization? You're especially good at this because you're a technologist, and I know you've worked with my team in terms of like what's expected and what's the what you want to see in your model for how the VR solution should be engineered. So you seem really good at this. I'm curious, how you kind of like, are there any guiding principles for how you drive that?
I mean, it's tough because certainly from the kind of the code kind of CTO kind of perspective, when I'm say like reviewing code, like other people's code is going to look different. Like we can have style guides, style guides, we can have like linters and various other things, but like everybody thinks in a different way. And it's one of the things you have to do is to kind of accept that, like, this solution works. You know, it's not how I would have written it necessarily, but it works, and that's fine. You have to be careful of kind of like how you treat that, because for me, like when I'm looking at like an implementation of something, I don't want to see kind of like what appears to be overly complex or convoluted or any way or something. Again, like the code should be very simple and speak for itself. Like, it shouldn't have lots of inherent complexity. Like, one of the things that I've kind of been not caught up, it sounds like a negative, and maybe some people might view it as this, but the whole idea of like, you know, like when we're writing code, it's not like just the ones and zeros, right? There's a certain, I think, elegance to writing code, and like something that's simple.
Craftsmanship,
yeah. No, it is, and it's not like a job, it's a craft. I think like we're doing that, and it's solving the problem with the fewest lines of code. And often, like, being a developer is like not writing code at all. It's like, let's go abstract the problem away so we don't have to write any code, because that's the best bit. Because, you know, if there's no code, there's no bugs. How about that?
Right.
Solve. But it's trying to think about kind of what we do there. But look, you know, talking to other developers, kind of going back to the actual question, it's like, no, it's trying to kind of impart some sort of like philosophical kind of approach to things. And, you know, it isn't just the style guide. It isn't like just the syntax of whatever language is. It's trying to kind of say, like, think about the problem as a whole, like break it down into, like, you know, the smaller, more manageable chunks. Like, that's how I like will solve problems. I'll kind of write some weird kind of pseudo code that's like breaking things down, and each of those gets, you know, so I go to like non-developers, non-programmers and say, you can write code. And they're like, no, I can't, really complicated. Yeah, so we start something really simple, like, okay, I'm English, okay, make a cup of tea. How would you make a cup of tea? And they'll start, well, I get the boiling water. Okay, let me stop you there. Where does the water come from? What are you boiling in? Again, but try to like impart to them is like, you take a problem, you break it down into smaller pieces until you get to a point where it's then obvious how you solve those individual ones. And like the skill, like the craft in it is that how you then bring all those together. But we do it in a way that's like, it's always kind of simple and clear and concise. And so one of my kind of things that I've been kind of more focused on of late and trying to kind of like get other people to think in the same way is the whole concept of like cyclomatic complexity, and looking at like, again, like you've got lots of nested code and it's complex, and trying to like build the mental picture in your head of kind of what this thing's doing. It's really hard. And it gets to a point where it's like, it shouldn't be that hard. You should be able to kind of look at each thing and like, you know, the whole like, you know, single responsibility, and like, you know, have a piece of code that does one thing, like use meaningful names. Again, it's like, especially when you're working with like, you know, non-native English speakers, and, you know, the English is the universal language of writing code, but trying to get them to like, you know, sometimes working with the names just to make it a little bit more meaningful. Again, like it's not their natural thing, but it's just like, let's have a slight tweak of there, and then it becomes more obvious. And again, like if we don't have to go refer to something else in the code as to what something does, guess what? It's cleaner, it's clearer, and you don't have to like, I'll lose my train of thought, go here, do that. And it just reads kind of just much more clearly. And I think like being able to do that, it's so much harder than just like jump in and write lots and lots of code. Like, yes, it's going to work, but you're more likely to have more bugs. And then if you need to make changes, those changes take longer. That kind of ties into the whole notion, you know, everybody's favorite thing, like technical debt. Like, what does that really mean? Like, apart from having fragile code that maybe kind of works because you've got some magic numbers and fixes there, like, if the requirements change, like, sometimes it's really difficult to make those changes on that current code. And what you end up doing is increasing the level of debt to do these convoluted fixes to kind of like, you know, rig this piece of code that was never really designed to do X, now to do Y. Whereas if you had a much cleaner kind of starting point, it would be more easy to adapt it and to change these things and do that. But the problem is, so few businesses, like up until probably the last couple of years, have really factored that into their overall development kind of budgets for timescales and time. And like, you have like, here's your sprint, here's your sprint, here's your sprint. You don't want to necessarily have a sprint after a certain amount of time just for the technical debt, because some business owner, some CFO is like, why are you spending money fixing problems that shouldn't have been there?
Yeah, that I already paid for. Yeah.
Because your process is flawed. Like, you don't have that underlying philosophy of always looking at things every single time. And like, before I commit a piece of code, is this as clean as it could be? Is it as clear does it do exactly what it should do? Like, is it testable? Like, do we have all these things? Like, and I kind of live in a world where like a lot of what we do kind of isn't readily testable because it deals with like the human interaction in a VR headset. And like, that's kind of hard to test some of those things. There's elements that you can, but that becomes like another big challenge as well. So yeah, like nothing is as simple as it could be or should be, but we should never lose sight of that as a goal. And again, like clean and clear gets you on a much better path.
Yeah, I love it. I used to ask this as like, I'll just ask it the way, please share an experience you would give peers. I don't think people really like advice, like, being shit on, right? But I think there are people who are entering their digital journey or maybe entering software development. What's a shared experience that you would give them or a lesson that you've learned that you would tell to folks starting?
I think we spoke about it over lunch today. It's like, especially from the writing code, but whether it's the lines of code or like DevOps, like how you build an infrastructure, where they're like, just think if you have to like, have a conversation with your future self, like how that's going to go. Like,
right.
Don't like leave it at a point where it's just like, why did you do this? Like, this is, so many things that I've gone back in the past. And a lot of it's like, yeah, okay, that's there. But every now and again, I'll come across things and just like, who the heck wrote this? And it's like, oh, I did that. So yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really trying to do that. And again, like by the clear, consistent, like, concise kind of nature of what we do, it means that we're less likely to like, leave things unsaid. Like for me, like, especially with the code side, and now we've got like code as infrastructure, like the code doesn't lie. Like that is where the truth is.
Right.
Like if somebody says to the business, oh, this should do X and Y, it's like, no, it doesn't.
I think we talk a lot about internally. It's like, do you know what it does? Do you really know what, like, you might have found a solution and like, aha, it works.
Yeah, no, you know what it should do. And you maybe haven't noticed that it isn't doing all of that because of certain other things. But again, like, when you break it all down, like when you look at like the database that's backing up, when you look at the actual lines of code and you look at like how you are or not validating the various inputs that can change all that, like that's the only true tale. Like,
yeah, I had
I'm just like, yes, it should do this. It does do that. It's like,
yeah, I had a partner on a project long time ago, and I had this mental like kind of gap with going into the underlying library, the library that I was pulling in that I'd gotten from the community. There was a Ruby gem, and I wasn't going into the Ruby gem to see what the Ruby gem was doing. I was just,
black box.
Yeah, I was just trusting it, and it wasn't doing it. And then, I had a really good coding partner that was like, no, go look at what it's doing, because like you said, the code doesn't lie. Mm-hmm. And then once I knew what it was doing, I wanted it to do something just a little bit better, and I ended up getting, a contribution to the underlying library. But there was some kind of mental block on just going that extra level deeper. And I think people would be best served by not creating those like kind of self-limiting thought processes. Like you should know what that line of code is doing or what's going on there, not guessing and not just trying to test your way to confidence that you know what it's doing.
Exactly. I mean, I kind of come across this like in pretty much every day kind of working with the team. It's just like so much stuff is like, here's some stuff that you should use in the project and leverage that. But I've always been clear, like, do not treat this as a black box. Like, understand, kind of like, look around there, see what features are there. Like, because again, like, there's a whole lot of things that built over time, a little helper things to make your life easier. If you want your life to be easier as a developer on this project, go look at these things. I can save you time. I've written that stuff already. It's tried and tested. It just works. All of those sort of things. And again, like, we don't build enough time into the developers' schedules always, so they can go do that. And that's, again, it's not a typical thing in the thought process when the schedule's being built out by the product managers. I love them all to bits. But it's trying to, again, like, it's not just a case like, go write this code. It's like, there's that reading time up until then. Like, I don't find it super constructive personally for me when I'm writing code if the first thing I do is write some code. Like,
right.
I need to properly understand the problem. Understand what it should do, what it shouldn't do, if there are other kind of prerequisites or other kind of like guide rails that you have to kind of fit in with, do that. But if you're using somebody else's code, whether it's a library, API, or wherever it might be, or if it's somebody else on the team that said you should build it with this, assume nothing.
Right. Assume nothing's
and maybe if you delved a little bit and you've read some of the documentation, there's some comments there, like, don't trust them. Comments are usually the last thing to be changed. The code doesn't lie. The code does what it does.
Yeah.
Again, that's why I generally tell people don't put comments in. Like, we aren't generating documentation. We aren't a big enough organization. Like, I don't want somebody to read something in a comment and believe that's more true than the code itself, because invariably it won't be.
Right.
So no comments actually is a time saver, because the code is clean, it's clear, it's sensible, and if not, just ask me.
Just ask me. Love it. Well, cool. That's all the questions I have, and I really appreciate your time. It's been great, just great spending time with you and getting to know. Yeah, awesome. All right, thank you so much.